Hello everyone. This presentation is called Know Thyself, a framework for understanding the non-physical and most vulnerable components of our being. I have been studying the human condition for about 6 or 7 years very intently. And I have contrasted that with what I see going on in the world. The condition of people at various levels of human existence, and began to do a lot of deep reflection on the human condition and how we got this way. I've come up with a framework relevant to know thyself that I think is relevant for everyone to see, to know, to understand. If you'll allow me the time through this presentation, I'm going to take my first attempt at doing an official presentation that goes a little bit below surface level, explaining to you the components of this framework. Now, a little bit about my background is I spent a couple of years working with and in shamanism. I've got a very philosophically oriented mind. I've spent 20 years autodidactically self-educating myself, and I'm an Aquarius that has a humanitarian mind. And I couldn't help, once it all came together in my head, but to spend time analyzing the human condition and what I've come up with. I'm also the author of a book titled The Virtuous Path. Bear with me 1 second. I was on the wrong screen. So this is my book. You can find it on Amazon at this URL if you're interested. As I began analyzing the human condition and recognizing the condition of our default state, which I would consider the animal man, the transition from the animal man to the higher level being, the higher order man, includes the study and working towards imbuing into oneself virtues. So I wrote a book about it. It's like a handbook, if you will, of the virtues that I thought to be the most relevant and the most useful for humans in their walk in this reality. But enough about that. So some of this presentation you will have some conceptual understandings about, or will have heard about bits and pieces of as I explain and present. However, don't allow yourself to presume anything about what's going to be presented here until you see how it all fits together. That's what's important, the whole tapestry. What I present is unique to me, is the framework itself, in which I'm presenting all of it to you. The overall tapestry is, I just read that one wrong. What I present to you that is unique to me is the framework itself, in which I'm presenting it all to you, the framework in which I'm presenting it all to you, and the overall tapestry that it shows you. This should provide you an understanding of what we do not know about thyself. The implications of the Delphic aphorism, know thyself, go far beyond what most people realize. Know thyself goes far beyond what most people realize. To illustrate that, I'll read this. The Delphic aphorism quoted, "I warn you, whoever you are, oh you who want to probe the arcana of nature, that if you do not find within yourself that which you are looking for, you shall not find it outside either. If you ignore the excellencies of your own house, how do you pretend to find other excellencies? Within you is hidden the treasure of treasures. Man, know thyself, and thou wilt know the universe and the gods." Now, the implications of that are actually multi-leveled. And when I say dimension, I don't mean third, fourth, fifth, sixth dimension. I mean it more of a figure of speech. Know thyself is quite multidimensional as well. What I've done is to better understand what I saw in the world, to better understand the suffering in the world, to better understand everything. I basically reverse engineered in a weird sort of way the very engineering of the human being itself, to see how, and to discover for myself, to see how humans were designed, and to discover for myself that we were built and engineered for levels of manipulation from the seen and the unseen that would stagger or drop most people if they knew and aligned with what it really implies about what we are and the intentions of what thought us up and put the effort to design and engineer us and then create us and then indoctrinate us to believe what they wanted us to believe. Basically, binding our minds, our beliefs and perceptions within a very rigid and tightly confining box of beliefs and perception. Be that as it may, man can transcend much to most of this by transcending the animal man, the very thing the beast system was built out to cater to. The first part of that is doing the work to come to know thyself. Then you can see why they do to us what they do. Now, there's a few things I want to mention here. I'm going to use the phrase beast system. Some people call it the matrix, some people call it a simulation. I'm using the words beast system to imply everything that we see out there that is controlled, run by them, quote unquote, them. The cabal that runs the world, the governments that are, on their payroll. We can see that there's this big, dark, evil force that has conscripted religion, it's conscripted governments, it's conscripted all of the mechanisms upon the earth. So I refer to that as the beast system. Now, when you understand certain religious context, certain esoteric and occult contexts, you understand that this quote-unquote seed of Satan actually exists upon the earth, boots on the ground, they exist. And they are the ones that run and control the beast system. They're the ones that are responsible for all of the influence, or the vast majority of the influence through all the mechanisms of social engineering, all of the mechanisms of influence of the human mind. Now, to give you a sense of how I tore apart reality, or tore apart humans, I did a video. Now this is just a screenshot of what I put on the wall, and it all tied into human suffering. So I ripped it apart, and to me, these were components of how we were engineered, and I had it compartmentalized and started to realize that all of this points to human suffering. I tied in the fact that we were engineered as an intelligent species that's going to be born conscious to whatever degree, varying degrees, and curious, and that curiosity will give birth and rise to desire. Yet the yogis and the monks and the gurus, they all tell us that desire is the root of all human suffering. Some will say attachment, yet we were born to pair bond. So when you look at these two things, desire and attachment, these two things are going to literally manifest out of the very beings that we are as a very byproduct of our existence and creation. Yet it all ties back to suffering. So that started to break my brain when I started to realize that in my head. So I started dumping it all out onto a wall. And from this, as primitive as this may look, from this, I began to understand an awful lot more about human beings. Excuse me, an awful lot more about how we were designed, how we were engineered, and came to realize that it looks like we're on what would be affectionately referred to as a loosh farm. It looks like we were built and engineered in very specific ways to stimulate the production of energy that, well, that's a whole different concept in and of itself. But I started to realize that it doesn't have to be that way for everybody, because I think that the loosh farm, the beast system, largely, I'm speaking in blanket terms here, There's always anomalies and areas of something a blanket doesn't cover. But I think this stuff is designed to extract from, whether it's the government and taxes or it's something else outside of this world and energy. It's designed to extract largely from the animal man, the man, woman that remains and exists in their default state. The below the belt, lower three chakras, more animalistically driven, human animal, man animal, as the Jews call Gentiles, goyim. That means in Yiddish, I believe, animals. And on some levels, you could actually equate that to truth, because the condition that humans are born in is more likened to the man animal, the human animal, the animal man, and the journey, the walk of man, the journey of man, is to transcend the animal man to the higher order being. The beast system and all of those that are working in it, for it, and pulling all of the strings, their efforts, everything they do is designed, and you can see this mechanism, if you will, that's like a quicksand, that's almost in a weird sort of way designed to keep the animal man trapped in the animal man state, where they're led by beliefs, lacking in self-discipline and self-control, easily stimulatable, easily manipulatable. And therefore, when you see the resistance, when you are a human being on a spiritual path, on a journey of your own inner and self-evolution, there's a reason for that. But you can keep going, and that's what I'm saying is the reason, even despite seeing how we were engineered, it looks like we were engineered on a lot of levels to be a slave race. I actually see a path of transcending that is likely one of the few paths forward for humanity if they ever expect to get off of the cycle of samsara, for those who understand what that means. So let me continue. This is a quote that I came up with, but I figured I'd say it anyway because I want to illustrate the importance of something as we go forward. Your mind. This is incredibly important. And the quote, you can read it, but I'll read it to you. If they can influence or even control the human mind, meaning your beliefs and your perceptions, the human behind I actually used the word ass in there, and I figured to clean it up, I put behind. If they can control or influence your mind, your beliefs or your perceptions, the human behind will eventually follow. This is why it's so important for humans to know the difference between opinions, beliefs, and perceptions. Beliefs and knowledge. It's important for humans to understand the difference between opinions, beliefs, and knowledge, and work to obtain knowledge above all else. Because humans can be led around or driven like cattle by their beliefs. And everywhere where you have beliefs, you can be deceived, because beliefs are not knowledge. You can be most easily deceived in and by what you believe by those that have an interest in you not knowing. Beliefs and what they work to pump into our heads is not knowledge. Beliefs are not what they work to pump into our heads, not knowledge. Why is that I can't read my own writing here? Okay, I think I got it figured out. Beliefs are what they work to pump into our heads, not knowledge. Knowledge is something you work for. Beliefs are for all that do not possess knowledge. And that's the truth. That's the absolute truth. Everything that this system is working to put into our heads, when you look at the education system, if you understand that, if you've gone down that rabbit hole and you understand how the Rockefellers set it all up, they designed it to make us good workers, to not teach us foundations of knowledge. Most of what we're given, ties into beliefs. And then when we get out of school, for a lot of people, outside of what they'll learn on the job specific to whatever career path they're on, most people don't learn a whole lot that they didn't get off the television or some mechanism of mainstream influence or information delivery to humans. Okay, so to illustrate the importance of the mind, I mean, here, like I said, if they can influence and control your mind, the human behind will eventually follow. That's just the way it works. They've known that for kind of a long time. When you consider the Hermetic principle of mentalism, the all is mind, the universe is mental, it gives you a sense, if you understand what this principle tells us, that the mind of God is the very universe itself. And if we're all fractal aspects of it, individuated units of this God consciousness, whatever, in this existence, also as above, so below, for us, the mind is the most important thing. It's a non-physical component, and it's where the pilot of the ship basically resides. So the mind is central to how we experience and interact with the world. I'm going to do this because I want to really illustrate, so just bear with me, the importance of the mind at a level that most people probably do not understand. The mind is central to how we experience and interact with the world, and it's critical for shaping our experiences, influencing our actions, and determining our quality of life. If the mind is twisted up into a pretzel in all the ways that it can be, the human's life experience is not a very good one. The quality of life is relatively low. The mind is the seat of the human experience. Its significance extends across every aspect of human existence. Consciousness is the state of being aware and able to think about one's own existence, thoughts, and surroundings, and it emerges from the complex interactions within the mind. So within your mind, you have cognition and understanding, your emotions and your feelings, identity and self-perception, mental health, that's a huge one, creativity, memory and learning, and you can see what these things give us. The mind is considered the seat of consciousness. The mind is the place where the animating essence of the body, the spirit, pilots the ship. It encompasses all of our thoughts, our perceptions, our self-awareness, and everything else, allowing us to perceive experiences and reflect on reality. Consciousness is the state of being aware of and able to think about one's own existence, thoughts, and surroundings. Consciousness emerges from the complex interactions within the mind. Psychologically, consciousness is linked to cognitive functions like attention, perception, and decision making. So this is a whole lot right here showing you how important the mind is. And I don't know that everybody walks around with this in their conscious awareness, acutely aware of how important your mind actually is. Because through all of the mechanisms of influence the beast system has available to it, in many of those respects, it's going after your mind. You see what I mean? It's going after the most important non-physical component, or one of the most important non-physical, probably the most non-physical component of you. And then when I start to reveal to you what's contained within the mind and how and why it's so important, you'll see how and why they're going after it. And then when you look at the world and you see the condition of people, it begins to make more sense why they're doing to us what they're doing to us. And they're doing it because we do not know thyself. And the mind is one layer of knowing thyself. How it works, you don't have to be a PhD. You just need to understand the basics, the mechanics, because if we do not acquire a level of knowledge about thyself that is at a commensurate level of knowledge that they have, they always have the advantage and the upper hand. The mind's role in consciousness allows for higher faculties, higher level faculties and functions, such as reasoning, introspection, analysis, creativity, etc. It enables us to contemplate our past, envision our future, and make choices that shape our lives. The mind's function as the seat of consciousness, where the conscious pilot within the body sits in a weird sort of way, shows us its fundamental importance in understanding human experience and existence. Many philosophies and scientific perspectives consider the mind to be the seat of consciousness itself. Here's some more things relevant to conscious experience, self-awareness, thought and reflection, emotions and perceptions, philosophical perspectives. The mind is crucial. It's absolutely critical for the emergence and functioning of consciousness, making it a central focus in discussions about what it means to be aware and alive. This is really important because to the degree that they affect our mind, they impact our consciousness. To the degree that they negatively affect our mind, how it functions, how it operates, they're negatively impacting our ability for conscious experience, self-awareness to whatever degree. Not all of these for everybody, but these are the types of things that they're having an effect on. This stuff here, it matters so much. And these are the components of us that we walk around blissfully unaware of. And they're, with every effort they put forth, with many layers and mechanisms of the B system, working to impact, destroy, stifle, stunt, inhibit your mind and the components of you that reside within it. So let's go forward. To give you an example of what I mean, this was a book written by Edward Bernays back in 1928 or 29. I want you to just read, this is literally the first 2 paragraphs. We're talking within the first couple of sentences that this man writes into his book titled Propaganda. It really tells you everything you need to know. Listen, I mean, just look at this. The conscious, so they're willfully doing it, and intelligent, so they're thinking and saying that they're doing it because they're more intelligent than you. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and the opinions. The opinions, where do your opinions reside? Within your mind. The opinions of the masses is an important element of a democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute the invisible government, who is the true ruling power of our country. Our minds are molded. Our tastes, which are derived from within the mind, are formed. Our ideas, more things that come forth from the mind, thoughts, ideas. Our minds are molded. Our tastes formed. Our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. And those men that we have never heard of work for places like the Frankfurt School, think tanks, the Tavistock Institute, the Hoover Institute, the Aspen Institute, the Brookings Institute, the Claremont Institute. These are all think tanks that work and function and serve as social engineers. These are the people that inject the poisons, the toxins into our societies. These are the people that work to shift public perspective, public perception, and all of those other types of things. Anyway, it goes on to talk about invisible governors. That's just to give you a sense. I mean, just reread that again. We are governed. Our minds molded. Tastes formed, our ideas suggested by men we've never heard of, those social engineers. What they're doing through all of that social engineering, through the television, through the radio, through the newspapers, through the magazines, through the social media, through everything that they have access to. This is how and where they're doing it, suggesting subliminals, NLP, double entendres, and lots of other tactics and strategies that I'm going to illustrate for you here real quick, because I want to show you the degree in which the tactics that they use that most people don't even realize. And when you see all of this and you realize this is what they're doing to you all the time, through every mechanism and vehicle that they have to deliver information into your head. So we're going to get to the 17th slide is where I start to really break more of this down for you. Laying the foreground is what I'm doing now. And it's going to take these 17 slides leading up to it to really illustrate the point, so that when I finally get to this overall framework, you understand the true gravity and the profundity of its importance. So Hollywood, TV, and advertisers use subliminals. And this specifically, what I'm about to explain to you here, is specific to just subliminals. And that's just one way that they influence the mind, using the television, using movies, using their mass media. That's just one of many. So for as much as I'm about to show you relevant to subliminals, when we get a little further into this, and you'll see all the other stuff that they use, and you start realizing how deep their efforts to influence your mind, what you think, what you believe, what you perceive, your tastes, your ideas, all of this. This is them influencing you, building, crafting, and molding what they want you to believe. You see what I mean? So, they intend to bypass your conscious filters right there. That's underhanded. That's sinister. Using subliminals is an effort to bypass your conscious filters, because the conscious mind would actively realize and critique information and spit it out. Subliminal messages aim to bypass this critical thinking, allow messages to reach the subconscious where they can be accepted without resistance, because the conscious mind cannot discern and cannot tell fact from fiction. It does not have that capacity. As powerful as the subconscious mind is, it cannot tell truth from lies, fact from fiction. That's why they seek to get past your conscious filters, because your subconscious mind does not have the capacity to critically think, to critically assess, to critically analyze the information that is being presented to it. So they use underhanded tactics to get this information into this part of your mind that is very, very important, because when you look at the way mind is compartmentalized, conscious mind, 5%. The Vedics believe maybe it's 10%. That leaves the other 90 to 95% of what mind is. That's not conscious mind. That's what they're going after. And we don't understand the degree in which our behinds are driven. Our ideas, all kinds of things come from the subconscious mind. So the conscious mind actively realizes and critiques information. Subliminal messages aim to bypass the critical thinking, allowing messages to reach the subconscious where they can't be accepted without resistance. The subconscious cannot discern and cannot tell fact from fiction. They also attempt to create an emotional impact, which could make you more suggestible or accepting of something from an emotional state. See, this is the manipulation of the non-physical component of you, your emotional body. Subliminals can invoke emotions or associations within your mind that aren't generally readily accessible to the conscious mind. This emotional engagement can lead to stronger connections with things that they want you to connect with, whether it's an advertisement, a product, a service, an ideology, a belief. And they use film, they use brands, they use products. This is the stuff they want you to get connected to. It's all mental influence. And I spelled influence wrong. I typoed it and put an I there instead of a U. We'll just let that go. You know what? I'm going to change that real quick. Okay, there we go. The beauty of OBS. So they attempt to influence the behavior of the unaware masses by subtly embedding ideas or suggestions quite repetitiously. They can slowly over time, or they can slowly over time very much influence thinking, beliefs, and eventually behavior. I'm going to read that one more time. They attempt to influence the behavior of the unaware masses, and by subtly embedding ideas or suggestions quite repetitiously, they can slowly over time very much influence thinking, beliefs, and eventually behavior, promoting certain actions, instigating certain actions, or influencing and shaping perceptions. This is not their domain. It's yours. Nor do they have the right. What they have is the ability, and they know that you don't know about it. They are taking liberties under the presumption that you do not know. The media, Hollywood, commercials, news, etc. All of it can subtly influence how people think and feel, potentially guiding their choices and preferences without them even realizing it. They use subliminal messages for collective mind control and predictive programming by embedding subliminal messages in films, music, and advertisements, reaching large audiences, subtly influencing societal norms, behaviors, and preferences over time. It's those imperceptible, incremental changes that people don't realize. Then they rinse and repeat, generation by generation, as repeated exposure tends to reinforce ideas in the subconscious. Well, they do that for each generation, but then they rinse and repeat and do this stuff for each generation. They rinse and repeat as repeated exposure tends to reinforce ideas in the subconscious. For instance, a particular ideology could be presented in various forms across multiple media outlets to normalize it. They use emotional triggers in storytelling, in Hollywood and TV, all of it, no matter what and where it's produced, Amazon, Netflix, or any other thing, HBO, all of that cable stuff. Things like fear, terror, excitement, or nostalgia can make the mind more susceptible to subliminal messages, aligning their emotional responses with a specific agendas. Think about it. They understand how to trigger you emotionally in such a way to make you more susceptible to subliminal messages, because when you're in an emotional state, your filters might be down because you're all in your feels and stuff. And then they can, through their subliminal, start aligning your emotional responses with specific agendas to certain things by programming your mind. This is what they work to do. They work to hit your and use your emotional triggers. They work to desensitize people, gradually introducing more and more controversial ideas through entertainment to desensitize people. This is all working on the mind because it's constantly showing you things. It's desensitizing you, working to make them more accepting of those ideas as they become normalized over time. They tailor messages to specific demographics to increase the effectiveness of propaganda, repetition, and subliminal techniques, making them more impactful on particular groups. And again, over time, slowly over time, rinse, repeat, 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 repeat. They also embed specific symbols or themes that carry particular occult, metaphysical, or even cultural significance. Think about that. This is because the subconscious mind it has its own language, symbols, sigils, images, colors, and those types of things. That's how to impress upon the subconscious mind. So in their TV, in their media, in their Hollywood, in their advertisements, in everything that they do, they embed specific symbols. They embed specific themes throughout, like a narrative in a TV show, in a movie, that carry particular occult, metaphysical, or even cultural significance to invoke subconscious responses, attempting to guide attitudes and beliefs without overt messaging. Think about that. Look at that. So all of this right here, everything I'm showing you, this back here, this is their attempts to get into your mind in ways that you don't know. This is what I mean by know thyself. To get into your mind by ways that you don't know. Our ideas suggested by men we've never heard of. They're trying to get into your mind, and they're using all of the most underhanded tactics that we're not aware of. They're subtle. We can become aware of them, and then we can begin to recognize the subtle attempts that they do. So they embed this stuff to get subconscious responses. Most of what they do uses methods to access and influence the human subconscious mind in ways the general public is completely unaware of. Again, they're doing it because they know that you don't know it, and because you can't stop them. You can only educate yourself to what they're doing and resist it and stop taking it in. To quickly illustrate the point, the following few slides list list off techniques often used. Well, let me fix that. Oh, no need. Where was I? The following few slides list of techniques often used in media, advertising, and entertainment to influence the human mind. That's the thing, to influence the human mind, both consciously and subconsciously. These techniques are used to capture attention, shape perceptions, and influence decision-making in various contexts of our lives, what we buy, what we watch, what we do, what we like, what we're interested in, all that stuff. This reveals the lengths to which they will go to influence what you believe and what you perceive. Subliminal messages, neurolinguistic programming, and you can pause this as I read through these, and you can see in green I kind of show you the more insidious way in which they do what they do. They use language patterns and psychological strategies to influence behavior and perceptions with neurolinguistic programming. Priming exposes one to stimulus influences that stimulus influences the response to another stimulus. Exposure to one stimulus influences the response to another stimulus, often without conscious awareness. That's what I'm getting at. All of this stuff is what they're doing. All of this, emotional appeals, repetition, framing, double entendre, anchoring, social proof, scarcity, bandwagon, authority figures, cognitive dissonance, storytelling, visual imagery. And you can pause this and look at this stuff. Influences subsequent judgment and decisions. They're encouraging conformity and acceptance. They're prompting quicker decision making. They're encouraging others to join. They're increasing its persuasive power by using authoritative figures. All of this trying to influence you, shape how it's perceived right here, shape, eventually leads to increased familiarity with the mind and the ultimate acceptance. That's where the repetition comes in. Visual imagery uses powerful visuals to invoke emotions. So, and then color psychology, your subconscious mind, the language that it uses colors. It uses colors strategically to influence mood and behavior. Think about that. There's a reason why they use red and blue for police lights. Music. They also use music and sound effects to set the mood, to invoke emotions, to create associations. Look at what they're doing. All of this stuff is straight up 110% to manipulate and influence what you believe and what you perceive. Look at it all. This is the lengths to which they go. And then using subliminals. So this is the purpose of setting the stage, to understand why it's so important that we understand. So this is just a depiction of the human in the lower three chakras. This is a depiction of the chakral body. And this line here as the differentiator, as the distinction level, the point in which man should transcend. And when you look at the things that are typically associated to these lower three chakras, look here, you got will to live, survival, fertility, procreation, sexuality, power, dominance, strength, fear, all of this animal, man stuff. This is what they're trying to keep us anchored in. This is the stuff the beast system is trying to keep us anchored in. This is a lot of the stuff that's relevant to the default state of the animal man. And the purpose of transcendence, is manifold. So this is to give you an illustration of the beast system. This is part of a, actually, hang on one second. I did an illustration here. Let me step away and kind of show you something. View presentation mode. Actually, let me step back out of presentation mode here and show you something. There are 20 of these that I have, and we're going to stop here at 10. I still have 10 more, but I'm just going to quickly show you these so that you understand what I'm showing you. So the human design, I'm not going to go into all of these. I'm just going to quickly pass through this to show you some things. This is part of a model and a framework I've been trying to explain to people. This is part of the Know Thyself framework that I've been trying to explain to people. That we were a biologically engineered slave race. And I have a ton of information contained within this to explain this to people. But there's 4 absolutes of human existence. Did I show you the non-physical components? Oh, the non-physical components of the human. When you look at how complex we actually are, and you consider what we don't know about ourselves, most of these slides from 1 to 10, or most of these presentations, go into components of knowing thyself. So when you look at all these components of the non-physical, it gets quite deep, what we don't know. When you consider mind, it doesn't look like a whole lot until you start to consider the things that are contained within simply the conscious mind. And then consider the things that are contained simply within the subconscious mind. And you get a sense of the depth of what's going on within mind and how much that we don't know about our self. Then there's the energy aspects of us. This is something that they also work to manipulate when you consider the loosh farm, when you consider the ways in which our strings can be pulled. Then there's the higher faculties. This is the places and spaces. I did a presentation, I think a 3-part presentation, illustrating all of this. That's on my YouTube channel. So then this is a little bit for layers of awakening. This is something I've gone through a little bit to show some people what, and this just shows the depth of which I've thought, analyzed, contemplated, torn apart the human condition, the human existence, the layers of the whole 9 yards. So, and then found that the barriers to getting through to people, what it is they're doing to control the human herd. That's why I wanted to show you this. This is that image that I was showing you. Is part of something that goes much deeper. There's so much to this. There's just so much to see, so much to look at, so much to talk about, so much to get into people's minds so that they understand the true nature of what's going on here. But basically, this stuff represents the beast system. It's just one illustration of it that I can put together in a depiction. And then another thing that they're doing is, cultural and ideological subversion. And this is kind of doing some deep dives into what this subversion does, what it looks like, how to counter it. It was everything that I could come up with and put together to make a reasonable presentation so people would be able to look within their society and look within the systems within their society to see where the cultural subversion's taking place, where the ideological subversion's taking place, because this is all the stuff that's working on the minds, the beliefs, the perceptions, and the ideologies, because humans are driven based off of their beliefs and their ideologies. So I've been quite busy putting in an awful lot of work. This is my attempt to try to teach humans what they don't know about themselves. And I put a lot of work into this. That's why I'm not just giving this stuff away. And I've got other stuff here as well. But when you contrast all of this to vices, the 7 deadly sins are more like vices. And when you look at how all of the stuff and there's things within the beast system that I haven't put in here that are there to allow you to feed all of these 7 deadly vices in all the ways that we can, all the greed that we can get involved with, all the ways that we can get anger and express wrath, all the things that we can lust for, all the things that we can get envious about, all the ways that we can get lazy and just stuff our faces with, or be gluttonous in multiple different ways. You can be gluttonous with sex. You can lust and gluttony can tie together, and it's not a food thing. You can be a glutton for punishment. You can be, pride. So this basically, all of these components of the beast system are designed to feed our pride, greed, wrath, all that stuff. And then on another level, the television, religion, money, school system, Hollywood, various components of this, the 7 deadly sins, murder, rape, assault, theft, trespass. Where do we see the most of that? Coming off the television. They tell it to us in religious stories. They tell it to us and show it to us in Hollywood. Politics is all about murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, the whole thing. So the entirety of the beast system is basically, this is me showing you, it's here to feed the animal man. These vices are the things that the animal man struggles with self-discipline, self-control. And These are what you would actually consider sins, if you will, and they're pumping this shit into our heads. We're born blank slates. So they're pumping all of this into our heads, and then as people develop and grow, we're seeing an awful lot more of this murder, rape, assault, theft, trespass, coercion, deception manifesting in our reality more than it might otherwise. And another thing these things are going after is these non-physical components of the human being. Other aspects of the beast system that you can see within here. I mean, I could put in here gambling and a few other things. Is look at how the system itself, I mean, the CIA are the biggest drug runners in the frickin' world, probably the biggest child traffickers as well. So you got porn and alcoholism, or porn, drugs and alcohol, porn and prostitution, every kind of violence, greed of every kind, all the vices fed in the beast system. All of that lower three chakras stuff, power, dominance, fear, control, sexuality, survival, will to live, gotta get mine, all of that animal man stuff. So, yeah. And then when humans are in this animal man state, they become much more easy to control using all of this stuff to occupy them, to pacify them, to tranquilize them, and to keep them occupied and pacified, never learning, never developing themselves, never growing beyond it. So I just kind of wanted to show you that look at all these things that we can get caught up in. Look at all these things, the vices, 7 deadly vices, 7 deadly sins, that we can get caught up in, and then look at how all of this stuff within the society, within the beast system, is designed to feed all of that. Now, this is where all that I've just explained to you was to set a foreground and to set the stage to explain to you and to present to you this. And it should now make it a lot more easy to understand how, with just what I've shown you leading up to this, how mind, beliefs, perceptions, I could have shown you some more about emotions and psychology and sexuality and human will, but I'll illustrate some of that as we go. The real key thing that I wanted to show you was the mind and all of the work, all of the efforts, all of the attempts, all of the money, all of the systems that they have built and put forth to affect your mind, your beliefs, your perceptions, and go after your subconscious mind, most specifically. Like this says here, go ahead and touch any one of these components of you, non-physical components of you. Consider a human body and all of the parts and pieces of it put together. Well, you can take all of these and in a weird sort of way, kind of like this, in a weird sort of way, you can stack together a non-physical body using all of these components. That non-physical body requires exercise like your physical body does, requires workout, requires resistance, requires effort to keep it healthy. Because we don't see this, humans don't take seriously the importance of these non-physical components of us, the importance of the health of these non-physical components of us, the importance of the strength of the non-physical components of us, and a handful of other things. And as we go through this, I'll show you more and more what I mean by what I say. But when you look at it, this is the stuff that they're attacking. Think about what they're doing to the sexuality of children. This is what they're attacking. Even if we're sitting in front of the television and we're seeing it as entertainment, what they're doing with what they're creating is quite literally attacking our minds, our perceptions, our beliefs. This is how they pull our strings, using our emotions, our minds. The beast system was built to manipulate these components of you. And if you don't know this, it's very likely they will own you in more ways than one. And all of those ways that you don't even understand because you don't know thyself. So this is the stuff that I'm about to show you, that our engineers did not imbue into us any understanding of. Perhaps they figured we'd be smart enough to figure it out. What is true is that the people that run the world, they understand this stuff about you. They understand it intimately. And to the degree that you remain ignorant of these things, You allow a power differential by way of their knowledge differential that allows them to do things to you, unpleasant things. It allows them to guide, steer, influence, manipulate, Pied Piper every part of you. This is the stuff that they know about you and how you operate, that you do not inherently know. This is why it's important that you know thyself. When you look at the landscape of the world and you consider what they can do and what you've seen them do with the knowledge differential that they possess, simply about the lower base level man, the knowledge and power, or the knowledge differential that they possess, simply about the lower base level man and all of his base level, more animalistic, uncontrolled, fleshly desires and urges. Then consider how the beast system is built out. It's like the devil's playground, where we can feed all of those 7 deadlies, run around tripping over our dicks for sex, and the inverse of that works for women, and how the inverse of that works for women. All that the base level condition encompasses, meaning the animal man, the base man, is enough for them to manipulate the herd masses like humans do to animals. They manipulate us like animals in a lot of respects, simply due to the predictability of human behavior when they're unconscious, unaware, ignorant, naive, undeveloped, and in their default, more animalistic, man-animal state. Their knowledge of how humans operate on all levels of our being, specifically the non-physical and the fleshly animalistic stuff, contains the stuff humans don't inherently know about themselves. So their knowledge of how humans operate on all levels of our being contains the stuff that humans don't inherently know about themselves, the inherent vulnerabilities and weaknesses and the non-physical components of our being. This is where they're using their knowledge differential against all of us for power, control, and domination. All right, next slide. To flip the script on them, man must come to know thyself in the ways that I will show you as we progress through this presentation. Contrast the framework that I will give you with the beast system itself, in as much as you understand it, and what it is, what it's built to do and feed within us, and what it does to us in all the ways that it does. And see for yourself how the whole thing was purpose-built to go after all of the weaknesses in man in his default state, to keep him bound, to keep him sheep-like and more animal-like, all of the weaknesses inherent to man and to woman. Humans should strive for an understanding of themselves, what they are as humans, that is at a commensurate level. I just messed up. Humans should strive for an understanding of themselves, what they are as humans, that is commensurate to what they, the cabal, know. Or they, the cabal, will always have an advantage over you that do not know. That's the truth right there. Humans should strive for an understanding of themselves, what they are as humans, that is commensurate to what they know. Or they will always have an advantage over those that do not know. All of the inherent vulnerabilities and weaknesses of the non-physical components of humans, and our lack of knowledge and understanding of these things as to the importance of the components of our very being, is where they know the most and we seem to know the least. It's so important. They do all they can do to manipulate, influence, damage, stifle, stunt these parts of you using the beast system that we all see every day. It could be said that most of what they do is to pump beliefs into your head before you have a chance to acquire knowledge, so they can lead you around and influence you based on your beliefs. And looking at the lockdowns, that would be a perfect example that everybody has fresh in their minds. They cannot do this to people with knowledge, only those who operate based on beliefs. It's a mental war in this reality. It's a perception war. It's a beliefs-based war. It's a mind control war. It's a propaganda war. It's a war for perception influence, perception control, and perception management. And the only way to win that war is through the acquisition of knowledge that grants you the eyes to see so that you can navigate this reality, bob and weave, if you will, until you see that you don't do the work that's necessary to acquire and obtain the knowledge. You won't have the eyes of discernment. You won't have the eyes to see. You won't have the necessary things that you need to not be devoured and consumed by some part of this reality at some point. We think we've got life all figured out. Humans, a lot of us. Yet we lack any comprehension of the non-physical components of us and the degree in which these aspects have been and can be manipulated by them. We are essentially missing half of the picture. That picture being the non-physical stuff. It's where we're not meeting the minimum requirements to be a human in this reality with what we do not know about ourselves and how we operate as humans. This is the knowledge they have and use against us. All forms of mainstream entertainment use tactics and strategies that you are wholly unaware of to influence what you think, believe, and perceive. And this may be a part that I should have cut out of here. Bear with me just a second. All right, yep, messed that one up. Okay, next one. So, the non-physical components of human beings. This is where I'm going to get into a little bit more of a deep dive into this stuff and explaining to you the importance of these things at a level that most people don't understand. And when you start seeing how important all of these components of us actually are, you'll see what the beast system is doing in all the ways that it's going after these things. And for instance, sexuality. In all the media and all the TV, the way they're pumping homosexuality or bisexuality or this or that, plus what they're doing in the school systems to turn children and a lot of other things. These are a non-physical component that we can see at various levels of what I'm referring to as the beast system. They're going after these components. So let me get on with it here. So, as I showed before, the Hermetic principle, the all is mind, the universe is mental, inferring the profundity of the importance of the mind. The conscious mind encompasses cognitive functions like thinking, reasoning, memory, imagination, the seat of the intellectual activity, and is responsible for processing information and making decisions. It's kind of important, don't you think? Humans, we're born blank slates. We're born completely programmable. So we learn, or not, standards of behavior, right versus wrong, morality, etc., etc. We're a garbage in, garbage out kind of programmable species. Epigenetics in this reality is very huge. The environment in which you are grown and develop. A largely hijacked indoctrination process for children, effectively programming the child's soft, sponge-like mind in all the ways this manifests, with poisons and toxins that confine their minds to a very rigid and tightly confining box that they have to awaken to, if they ever will, and then do all the work that's necessary to break out of the box and reform their paradigm and all the things that go along with that. To control humans, you've got to deceive them at the most foundational layers of their being. And that is what they believe and what they perceive. And you've got to begin doing that when they're young. And then think of the Jesuit priest, what was it? Ignatius Loyola, I believe, is quoted as saying, "Give me a child until age 7, and I will give you the man." They know, they knew. And that was 550 years ago. That quote was memorialized. So when you think of the mind, what quality of life and relationships do you suppose someone whose mind, emotional body, their psychology, or their sexuality is damaged in all the ways these things can happen, has? What quality of life and relationship do you suppose someone whose mind is damaged in all those ways has? It's as important as the heart, lungs, liver, and kidneys that these components of us remain healthy and undamaged and unpoisoned. Think about it. They're poisoning us with our bodies, with the air, food, and water, GMOs and all that other stuff. But anyway, I digress. So the mind is chopped up into a 5% conscious mind where the pilot of the ship resides, thinks, and analyzes, contemplates, and discerns. Beliefs, perceptions, self-image, non-physical things, very important, very, very important, reside in both places. That's what the arrow is pointing up and down, because you're going to get pieces and aspects of each of these from the conscious and the subconscious. Now, within the subconscious, which is 95% of what mind is, thusly, it's the prize for the social engineers, the beast system influencers. In all forms that it comes at us, that's what they're working towards, for the most part, is the influence of the subconscious mind, because it makes up 95% of what you are. That's why I explained to you their use of subliminals, and then pointed out even more the ways in which, through underhanded ways and means, they do things to get past your conscious filters. Now, within your subconscious mind, it gets quite complex, but you've got your baggage in your subconscious mind, buried, unresolved, unhealed, never dealt with, childhood traumas, adult traumas, etc., etc. And religion, Hollywood, TV, music, etc., they're working towards programming our minds with subliminals and the subconscious. So what I'm explaining is that these mechanisms are working to program our subconscious mind through subliminals, predictive programming, getting beyond your conscious filters, ideological influence, propaganda, NLP, applied linguistics, double entendre, which is wordsmithery. So much about humans is driven or comes forth from the subconscious mind. Behaviors, phobias, and other such things. That's why it's the prize, because it's the biggest part of our consciousness, even though it's called subconscious. What they get in there, they know we don't have the knowledge offhand, tools offhand, to get into the subconscious mind and get this stuff out. So what they get in there will largely be with and remain with most of us. Much about human behavior. Okay, got that one. So there is no known direct or inherent access for humans for the subconscious mind. So like I said, what they get in there, they know is going to stay with you and ultimately influence what you think, what you believe, what you like, what your tastes are, your opinions, etc., etc. Your subconscious mind has its own language. That's why they use things like colors or emblems, logos, and other such things, even sigils in cartoons, in anime, with Bart Simpson. There's just so many different ways. And our subconscious mind has a profound effect on our dreams and our dream state. This is where the spiritual component of us does its thing while we're asleep. They're working to impact and affect your subconscious mind. And then this is the stuff that's in there. And when they're working to try to affect a part of your mind that affects your dreams and your dream state, they're going way, 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 way beyond the line. So emotions. Your emotions come from your endocrine system, which doses you with chemicals. Emotions are designed to tell us things, like to take action, that something must change. They're designed to tell us this is good, I want more, through the good chemicals like dopamine, oxytocin, and the love hormones, or the love chemical, sex hormones, endorphins, and all that feel-good stuff. Or this is bad, defense, boundaries, go away, I want less. And you got cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. However, emotions can be weaponized against us when we're ignorant, when we're lacking emotional maturation, the emotional intelligence, the EQ, and lack certain knowledge, understandings, or disciplines. So these emotions, a non-physical thing, can be very much weaponized against us, especially if they can do things to the mind to affect the will or to affect self-discipline or self-control. Emotional strings can be pulled in countless ways here. Many components of the beast system are built for it. So when you consider how TV, mainstream movies, mainstream media, movies, music, all of it, politics, to pit us against each other, gets you enraged or offended, or religion, and all the various ways that all of these systems can pull our emotional strings. Our angry lovers can pull our emotional strings. Evil people, narcissists, adult children can pull your strings. Father Ripperger, in his presentation, says that demons and other demonic entities can pull our strings. Therefore, the importance of managing our emotional body, because here's the thing, we're being dosed with chemicals. That's what emotions are. It's the chemicals that we're being dosed with, and then we feel it. Well, think about this. If you were to inject yourself with a needle full of heroin or cocaine or what are these other opioids, go ahead and be normal and manage yourself. There's chemicals now coursing through your bloodstream. Well, the way the endocrine system works, when you get dosed with those anger chemicals, there's now, in a very similar way, chemicals like the heroin, like the cocaine or whatever else, that are now coursing through your body. The Matrix, in that movie, where Neo is standing in front of the architect, and an architect can tell that Neo's getting a little frustrated with him. The architect says something to the effect of, I'm going to paraphrase, I don't think I'm going to get it exact. He's like, you are experiencing the chemical precursor to an emotion, and goes on to say that it's designed to disrupt logic and reason. So to the degree that the system and all of the mechanisms of the system can pull our strings and get us triggered into emotional states, it makes us less capable of logic and reason. That is just a fact. Fear affects critical thinking. Fear affects wise choice making and all that other stuff. When your body is being dosed with the chemicals associated to fear, we don't think well. That's why the military gets guys in boot camp to deal with all kinds of fearful type of stressful environments, bullets whizzing over their heads and practice and all this other stuff, so that they can begin to think clearly while being dosed with those chemicals of cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, etc., etc. It's an acquired thing. You have to work for it. You have to develop it, but it's not the default state of most people. And since most people don't do the work to develop these things in us, in themselves, the system, the TV, the movie, the music, the Hollywood, all the stuff can pull your emotional strings and have a ripple effect, because when they pull your emotional strings, they can then influence your mind. When they pull your emotional strings, you might behave in a certain way, do something that you wouldn't otherwise do. When they pull your emotional strings, logic and reason can be and generally is disrupted. Therefore, it's not wise for us to allow them, or anybody else for that matter, which is why I put in here angry lovers, evil people, narcissists, and all that stuff. Because when your emotional strings can be pulled in the countless ways that they can be, we're easily manipulatable. It's easy to pull our strings. It's easy to get your goat. It's easy for someone to get a rise out of you. And this whole thing relevant to emotions ties directly into self-discipline and self-control. Because what emotions can do to the human, what do I got going on here? Oh, because of what emotions can do to humans, discernment of people, their intentions, behaviors, etc., is a necessary ability to develop. Discernment comes via knowledge you work for, that gave you the eyes to see and recognize that which you did not before you educated yourself and obtained the knowledge, even if through direct experience. So, wait a second. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is that discernment is something that comes through knowledge. Knowledge gives you the eyes to see. Knowledge gives you the ability to discern. And because of what emotions can do to us, discernment, which is a necessary skill, ability, and tool that comes from the work that you put in to acquire knowledge, that discernment of people, because of what emotions can do to humans and their intentions and behaviors, is necessary. How you will develop that discernment is part of this know thyself stuff, because the more you understand how your emotions work, the more you understand the way the beast system works to pull your strings, the more you can develop yourself to be beast system proof, if you will. So anyway, going on. Most humans, not all, react to emotions rather than respond. Reaction has its place, but many humans are so undisciplined and lacking control, they are reactionary to emotions or sudden emotional charges. All of this ties into self-mastery. So when the human is reactionary, that's a human that's not in control. That's a human that's more in their animal-like state. Aspects of self-discipline and self-control that tie to the human will are components of self-mastery, and self-mastery is the thing that you're doing when you are working to transcend the animal man, basically, and becoming Jew-proof. And the reason I say Jews is because they control the beast system. They control all the money. They're responsible for all of the pornography. They've infiltrated all the governments. They've infiltrated all the systems on the earth. They built Hollywood, the music industry, everything that basically controls or perverts the human mind. That is objectively true. There are other people that work for them, but this is all their stuff. I've done the work over the last 20 years to come to know this for myself as an almost 53-year-old man that's awake, conscious, tuned in, self-educated. This is the root of the problem. This goes biblically. This really goes biblically. But anyway, I digress. Let's move on. So, psychology. Psychology is the amalgamation of mind, emotions, and behaviors. Traumas, upon developing children, affect their psychology. And consider the level of traumas that human children experience generation by generation, and then through each of the developmental stages of childhood development. And this is what creates narcissism. This is what's creating sociopaths. And this is what creates secondary psychopathy. So there's a lot of different stuff about the psychology that, how do I say this? When it gets damaged, it all shows in non-physical behavioral manifestations. Just like I was explaining, when the physical body is broken, I can see that you're broken. Therefore, if you're yelling because I can tell you're in pain, I'm probably not going to judge you for it. But if you're yelling because something's broken in your mind, and I just see you yelling and I can't see something where you're in dire pain that makes sense as to why you would be screaming, I'm just going to judge you based off of your bad behavior, never really realizing that it's a non-physical component of you that has been damaged in that context. Humans with damaged psychologies, oftentimes rooted in childhood, generally behave poorly, have challenging to very challenging lives, many times negatively impacting people close to them, even others around them. Most, not all, disorders of the mind manifest as a byproduct of abuse or abuses and or trauma and traumas unresolved and or the damages the abuse or traumas caused, perhaps even irreconcilable or unfixable damage. This is the stuff that affects the human psychology. The psychology is a non-physical component. And with the mind and the emotions tied together, the psychology, that's you kind of in a nutshell, along with sexuality as well. But when these non-physical components of us become damaged, are impacted, negatively impacted through the traumas, that negatively impacts and affects the quality of our life, the quality of our lived experiences, the quality of our human relationships, the quality of our bonds with humans, with people, the quality of everything. So as a non-physical component, the psychology is incredibly important. Now, when you think about the poisons and toxins that are injected into the mind, relevant to beliefs and perceptions, that can affect the psychology. But then there's also poisons and toxins that create some of the damage to the physiology that affects the psychology, and neurodiversity would be one of those, because we see the toxins that are injected into the body that affects the psychology because of it affects cognitive function, and we call that neurodiversity. It's all part of the psychology. However, these poisons and toxins that are injected into the body after the child is born have an effect on the physiology, which ultimately affects the psychology. And yeah, that's the correlation I'm trying to make. So this is just a brief illustration of the psychology and trying to explain to you that it is quite literally the amalgamation of the mind, the emotions, and the behaviors, and that's how it's going to express. When you look at certain people that behave poorly, when you look at trolls online or various things, you can see what damaged psychology does, how it manifests, and yet it's a non-physical component of the human being. So the human will is another thing that they work to affect. Traumas affect the human will, abuses affect the human will, psychological abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse affects the human will, and a whole host of other things affect the human will. And your will is important as a spirit. It's the one thing that you are endowed with. Will. The will to choose. The will to act. The will to do. The will to say no. All of that is within your hands. It's all that within you. It's your will. Mental, emotional, psychological, and sexual abuses and traumas inhibit the will. Things like depression, CPTSD, PTSD, fear, and things of that nature have an impact on the human will. The human needs the will to act, to do. It's incredibly important. Deracination can affect the will because there's a level of demoralization in that. There's a level of depression that can go along with that can have an impact on the exercising of the human will. Mind control in its various forms inhibits the will. Demoralization would be one example of that. Spiritual attacks and spiritual warfare can inhibit the human will. And spiritual attacks can be quite demoralizing. Spiritual attacks can beat you down and literally destroy you mentally, which leads to a demoralized state, which can lead to depression, which again ultimately affects the human will. The seeds of self-mastery are contained within the human will. The will towards inner evolution, the will towards self-improvement of any kind is an act of will. Transcending the man-animal, the animal-man, is an act of will. Self-discipline and self-control are acts of will that are necessary to control the emotions or have emotional charges. Self-discipline, self-control, that's an act of will. But you need a lot of other things too. You need the knowledge to recognize what you're dealing with, the will to then act, or all of these things working. Necessary to control lustful desires, energies, etc. This is what human will is for. So the ability to control ourselves, self-discipline, self-control, applies for heavy emotional charges, applies to lustful, heavy sexual energies and desires, where they can affect your will. They will. Where they can weaken your will. Now let's think about it this. I've been saying flashing lights, shiny objects, titties everywhere, scantily clad men, scantily clad women. All you got to do is see it. Uh-oh. You start working on willpower right there. And if somehow you have an opportunity to do it, will you recognize it as good or bad? Will you do it? Will you not do it? Human will, self-control, self-discipline. There's a myriad of ways through television, through abuse, through the traumas, through movies, through all kinds of different things that you wouldn't necessarily expect or suspect, where the human will and all of these other components of us, psychology, emotions, and the mind, can all be affected in ways that we don't understand. And the thing about this is these are all non-physical components. Mind, emotions, psychology, human will, sexuality, all non-physical, all very important. And to the degree that they're damaged, look at the behaviors that we see coming out of human beings, whether they have damaged minds, damaged emotional bodies, damaged psychologies, or a combination of any of those three. Look at the behaviors of poorly behaving people that have meltdowns, as an example, when they're simply presented with facts. Well, sexuality, look at the behaviors of people when the sexual polarity is inverted through perversions that were probably imposed into the child's life while they were developing. There's a lot about sexuality that we don't understand. Did I cover everything with human will? I think I did. If nothing else, just to give you a sense, a little bit below the surface level. Anyway, let's go into sexuality because it's kind of important. It's very important. It's how we all got here. Okay, so sexuality. The Gnostic concepts of sex, sexuality, and sexual energy, I think, are some of the most healthy. And if you get on YouTube and you search, you'll find a couple of videos. This is a link to one of them where, actually, bear with me one second, just in case you can't see it. The link there, YouTube, watch, there it is. Anyhow, in the light of the last 15 to 20 years, what I've seen started to make me contemplate sexuality in ways that I hadn't before, because I saw what they were doing and I wondered why they were doing it. And I started to contemplate the importance of sexuality. I started to realize that it's one of these non-physical components of us that has a physical expression, but is a non-physical component of us nonetheless. When you look at the society, we've been hypersexualized since at least the days of the Jews in Germany and their decadence, prostitution, and pornography. That was one of the things that pissed off Hitler so bad, because of the corruption and the poisons and the toxins and the decay of his society, their society back then. Since then, it's never stopped. It's only spread upon the earth and gotten orders of magnitude worse. To, for example, free internet porn, it's hideous. So much about the power of sexual energy and the metaphysics and the energy aspects of creating children. People just don't know. And you combine their lack of knowledge with the hypersexualization, with us being driven from our lower three chakras below the belt, man animal, beast animal, human animal kind of perspective. All of a sudden, you start to see it from a very different perspective, especially when you understand the Gnostic concepts of sexuality. And I honestly think that it's the most healthy and the appropriate way for us to view healthy sexuality is. It's you could say, yeah, that's your opinion or your philosophy, but I've been at this for kind of a long time, and with all the ways in which sexuality has been perverted and debased, and all of the things where it's been turned dirty and all this other stuff, the version of sexuality that they explain there, and the energies between the man and the woman, the way the man and the woman's energies are supposed to come together, yada, yada, yada. When I listened to this years ago, it hit me. It was the most accurate description of what true sexuality is supposed to be, and what it's been perverted and devolved into by those that have been doing this for kind of a long time. There's so much power of our sexual energy for creating other than children as well. This sexual energy, there's things that we can do to recycle it within ourselves. There's just so much that we don't know about it and don't understand about it. Yet we walk around thinking we're like stud muffins because we know how to throw down. But we're doing that from the animal perspective, and we know not what we don't know. The fragility of the sexuality of children's developing minds, sense of self, etc., is important, and they're still quite programmable. So when you see the society when you see television full of abuses, molestations, rapes for many children from family, from epigenetic environments, someone trusted, or an opportunistic predator or predatory pedophiles, when you consider the roots of homosexuality, there's a documentary on it called The Born Gay Hoax that shows the video itself, the documentary itself shows you, because every single one of them that were asked, all of them without exception, said that they had experienced being raped or molested as children. This is happening at epidemic rates. And then look at what's happening in schools and how they're going after the sexuality of children to turn them trans and all of this other stuff that we're seeing. This is horrible. This is a degradation of the human being. And they're doing this when we're young and vulnerable. They're going after our children in ways that we don't realize and then don't understand why our children become what they become later on in life if we didn't raise them that way. It's not the parents in that circumstance. It's all the poisons from the school. It's the teachers. Look at the leftist, gay, tranny, bi teachers. There's videos of them all over TikTok and social media and BitChute where they tell you what their intentions are. This perversion of sexuality turns these people to a point where they get nasty. And, the San Francisco Gay Men's Choir did a song called "Will Convert Your Children." I mean, that's the most flagrant thing I've ever seen in my life. So sexuality is the way in which we get here. And rather than try to present myself as somebody who is like extraordinarily knowledge on sexuality, I would like to point you to this video. To this video and watch it. It'll give you a sense. It will give you a much better sense than I could. And the sense that it will give you is outside of the boundaries of what I'm trying to convey in this presentation of the non-physical components of human beings. I think watching this for you would supplement your understanding or shift your perspective on the importance of human sexuality in a way that and to a degree that it may not be now. It's important because it's kind of the basis upon why I see it as such an important thing. It's not just, we're sexual beings, that we should just have sex whenever, wherever, with whomever in this polyamorous kind of thing. Oh, no. That's the way the quote unquote devil would definitely have you do it. So poisons and toxins put into the mind of developing children that don't know any better also flips or creates an inversion in the sexual polarity. Gay, bi, lesbian, trans. All of this is Jewish influence coming from the leftist parents. Gay parents shouldn't be a thing, but it is. And the leftist teachers in all the grades of schools, public and private. These are just objective facts. This isn't something that, he did just say that. Yes, that's the truth. That's the truth. That's how it's happening. And if we don't talk about this, if somebody who doesn't rationally present it to people and explain it to them so that they can look at it, then how is it ever going to change? How is it ever going to change? So the default state of the human beings is that lower three chakras, dick-driven animals that I've explained. And this is truly how most of us got here. This default state, this is a default state of all of us. Nobody's born a realized human being operating in all the upper four chakras or all seven chakras. The default state of humans is the man animal. And I'm not saying that we won't learn and still be in that state, but that's the default state. We're largely dick-driven animals, driven in a similar way by sexual desires when we're teenagers, when we're young adults, when we lack the self-discipline and self-control and the knowledge. So that's how most of us get here, is by being in that condition. It's not a criticism. I got here because of that. I'm sure all of you got here because of that. It's probably the rare occasion where two realized human beings came together and did the thing and created a child. So that's the thing. It's the default state of humans are the lower three chakras, quote unquote, dick-driven animals condition. And that's how most of us got here. And when you think about it, we take little consideration for the energy that's within ourselves, whether we were horribly abused as children or whatever the energy within us is. And we know not of the energy generally when we're in this lower three chakras driven from below the belt condition. We generally don't care too much about the energy of the other person. And this is going to tie into sexuality. And sexuality is creating children in a lot of respects. We know not the metaphysics of creating a child with our own and someone else's bad energy and the combining of that energy in the creation of that child. passing that energy on to our children. And when you look at the condition of people in the world, it kind of shows. When you look at what a lot of people deal with, it kind of shows. There's something to be said for suffering the sins, quote unquote, of thy mother and thy father. And to the degree that we don't do our own inner work before we have sex and make love to somebody and create a child, we're taking no consideration for their energy, for our energy, the metaphysics of the creating of the child. It's kind of a really important thing. And this would make sense. This will all make more sense if you understand what's said in, for instance, this particular video. There's a handful of them out there that give you this context. And again, when I say this context is the most healthy context that I could think of, I've ever found, from a moral perspective, from a, what's right perspective. So anyway, the lower three chakras behaviors, drives, urges when we're younger, the default state of humans. Oh, yeah. So lower three chakras type behaviors, those drives and those urges are definitely with us when we're younger, lacking the self-control. The dick-driven animal, the man or the woman, man driven by, women driven for, and the condition that puts us in. The energy passed to children impacting their lives, generally, not always poor parenting. Generally, but not always. It's poor parenting skills from the dick-driven man-animals, meaning their own unhealed, how do I say this? Their own unhealed traumas and wounding and associated mindsets and energies, plus a mindset. So yeah, this is kind of how it happens a lot of times. Their own unhealed traumas and woundings, associated mindsets and energies, combined with that of the other parent. And then parents are of the mindset, my daddy did it to me, so they do it to their own children. So when we're operating from this condition, the quality of the humans that we're producing is less than it could be if we simply did more work on ourselves to improve the quality of the energy within ourselves, the quality of our state of mind, etc., and then got aligned with somebody, aligned with love. The difference is astounding. The difference is night and day. The difference is night and day. And a lot of us, when we're in this condition of these lower three chakras, we're lacking love during the act of sex. Not everybody, but a lot of times. And that's huge. That the energy of love between the two people, while they're actually in the act of conception, is important. Cycles of abuse, cycles of ignorance. So I think what I'm depicting here is when we're in this default human state of the lower three chakras, driven from below the belt, these are the types of things that are going to manifest out of us by and large. There are exceptions and anomalies to everything, but by and large, we'll take little consideration for somebody else's energy. We'll take little consideration for ours. We just want to get our thing off. We just want to have our fun. We don't know about the metaphysics of having children in this lower three chakra state. We're unaware of the energy that's passed and the impact on the lives of the children, on their minds, on their very being. So yeah, that's what this was. I should have probably done this one a little different, a little better. I think I got ahead of myself, but since I'm in the middle of it now, I'm going to explain through it and explain what it was I was trying to convey here. But our sexuality is so massively important. Let's go to this next one. It's even challenging for adults. This is relevant to our sexual energy, to manage and control themselves with a heavy sexually charged energy. So children that have never been taught, look at the world. It's even challenging for adults. Oh, okay. So, wow, how did I do that? Okay, so it's even sexually challenging for adults to manage and control themselves with heavily charged sexual energy. So children, the way they get into puberty these days, 10, 11, 12, and teens that have never been taught about how to manage and control themselves. Yeah, and look at the world. Look at what the beast system has to feed the developing minds of children regarding sex. It's everywhere. It is everywhere. Hence, hypersexualization. And if it's challenging for an adult to manage and control themselves with heavily sexually charged energy, just imagine what it's like for kids. And then with them going through that, and if parents fall short in teaching their children about how to manage that sexual energy, you have the world and the beast system doing all that it can to hypersexualize and put out there titties and scantily clad men and women and all of the innuendo and all this stuff to get, I mean, you get teens together and there's nobody watching them. 16-year-olds may start, doing the thing, possibly even younger. So that's how important it is. The age ranges for the sexual prime of man. This is another thing about this is they understand all these things. So they're able to capitalize on it through hypersexualizing because they realize that the age ranges, and this is another thing about the way we were engineered. The age ranges for the sexual prime of males is significantly different than for the age of females. And an example of that is cougars that are going after the younger guys. You got to wonder why that is. But look at how the beast system can play on that, especially when we're at a lower three chakras condition. Puberty and sexual maturation takes place long before teens develop the self-discipline and self-control to manage those energies. You kind of got to wonder why that was. So the more that we know about this stuff and fill in the blanks for where our engineers didn't give us any information, we figure it out ourselves and make adjustments accordingly. But this one still has me staggered here, where the sexual prime for males and females is significantly different, which is why you have cougars, and that sexual maturation for males and females takes place long before self-discipline and self-control to manage those energies sets in, long before they've been given or developed their own understanding or knowledge of sexuality as well. You'd think that we wouldn't develop sexually until we actually matured into a full adult, because of the importance of sex in this reality, the metaphysics of it, the energy of it, the creating of children. You'd think we'd know an awful lot more. So long before they've developed any level of self-discipline or self-control or the capacity for it, specifically regarding the power of sexual energy and the heightened levels of sexual hormones that course through our bodies and at those young ages. Why? That puberty and sexual maturation takes place long before we've been developed knowledge and understanding, long before we've developed the capacity. And again, it's hard enough for mature adults to control, let alone teens, or in today's world, preteens hit puberty and have to manage all of that with parents that don't fully understand, know, or even care, or we wouldn't see the younger ones in the conditions that we see them in. And that's the evidence, and it speaks for itself. Look at TikTok. You can see, I guess you could say, 16-year-old girls dressed in the shortest shorts and scantily clad. If I was their parent, their father, there would be but how is this getting into their heads? I'm not here to criticize people. I'm here looking at the condition and seeing where all this is happening. And again, sexuality, non-physical thing that has a physical manifestation. So it's important. So hang on a second. Back here. So we've gone through mind, beliefs, and perceptions are kind of self-evident. Let's think about this for a second. Beliefs. They can lead you around with what you believe. If you don't understand the difference between opinions, beliefs, and perceptions, they can lead you around by filling your head with beliefs. They can lead you around by influencing your perceptions. And if you lack foundational knowledge, if you see them as an authoritative source, they then will begin to be able to manipulate and influence what you perceive. If you lack knowledge and they tell you a certain thing, they could then influence what you perceived about a certain thing. And if it's not true, you would never know it. Yep. So mind, beliefs, perceptions, emotions, psychology, sexuality, human will. Okay, so let's move forward and get back through this here. So I guess what I'm trying to do is explain as best I can the importance of our sexuality on multiple levels, multiple dimensions of human existence, from the energy, from the act, and a few other things. So, relevant to our sexuality, this is more just me kind of questioning why the gods, so to speak, our engineers, made us this way. Because these things, where I got why here, why here, why here, and why here, these are the things that make it so easy for the beast system and the hypersexualization injected into our societies from Jews. It makes it so easy for them to further pervert this thing that is so complex, that's so important. Seriously, it's a really, really, really big deal. So now consider the condition of people that you know or have seen whose minds, sexual, I think I mentioned this, are broken. It's all bad for them. What happens to people with broken or wounded minds or psychologies? What's the quality of their lives or relationships? Again, this is referring to the non-physical components of us and what happens to us and the condition of us when the mind, the emotions, the psychology, the sexuality, or even the human will are all damaged, broken, wounded, or otherwise destroyed. The evidence of the importance of these non-physical components of humans is off the charts when you actually look at it, when you actually think about it. But this is something that most people don't do because they're non-physical. This is why somebody who's emotionally and psychologically all messed up, and then they're behaving in a certain way that is really unpleasant and unsavory. Most people, rather than recognize somebody did something really horrible to that person, took them off guard, pulled the wool out from underneath or the rug out from underneath them, deceived them, betrayed them, this, that, or the other. So psychologically, they're wrestling with it. Emotionally, they're a fucking wreck, and you see some poor behaviors coming out of them. And it would be easy to look at them and say, oh, you're just behaving like an asshole. When in fact, something actually happened that caused a level of damage that would be commensurate to me walking up to you with a bat and maybe capping you in the knees. Now, if you saw me yelling and screaming, and then I said, like, that you could see my knees were swollen, you'd recognize it. But if you can't see the damage that's done to somebody internally, you don't actually know, and you judge the behavior. And most of the time, people don't want to tell you. Like, I will tell you if my legs have been capped and I'm in pain. I'll tell you. But do you think somebody will be all that forthcoming, saying, emotionally, I've been damaged, and psychologically, I'm dealing with a stab wound or two. Can you help me with that? Or would you, no, people don't want to tell you that because there's something about the psyche of man that has a lot of pride and a lot of ego surrounding his internal being. Yet it's the most important part because the totality of your being comes from the internal places and spaces of the mind, the emotions, the psychology. So the beast system does all that it can to affect these aspects of the human being, unbeknownst to most humans as it's being done. Going after the mind, going after the beliefs, going after the perceptions, going after your subconscious, going after your emotions, going after your psychology, going after your sexuality, going after your spirituality, going after your human will. It goes after all of this stuff. These components of human beings are the places and spaces in which we are inherently weak and vulnerable. In our default state, having never really done any of the work on ourselves. Think about it. This is where we are the most weak. All of the non-physical components of us. Because we've not done any work on it. If I am weak in my body, I can go to hit the gym. And in 6 months to a year, have developed a significant level of strength. Or, noticeable strength. But if I don't do any work to strengthen my mind, if I don't do any work to strengthen any of the non-physical components of myself, they stay relatively in their default state, which is inherently weak and vulnerable. These are the things within humans that the beast system goes after to keep us locked down into the lower three chakras, the dick-driven man-animal, at a state of consciousness that is got us in the lower three chakras, has us at the animal man. Flashing lights, shiny objects, scantily clad men and women, titties everywhere. He who has the most toys, the most stuff wins. Society, all of it, is basically set up to tantalize and titillate the eyes, the mind, the senses, the urges of the animal man. So our journey is to transcend that. Okay, so that's basically it. I think we've come to the end. Yes. So I just want to go back just to recap. For a long time, I've been talking about mind, emotions, beliefs, perceptions, psychology, sexuality, human will, self-discipline, self-control, and there are others. But for the sake of showing you a framework, showing you a model, when you look at all this and you realize how non-physical all of it is, when you look at all this and realize what happens when they're all damaged, when you look at the beast system and look at how it goes to affect mind, beliefs, perceptions, emotions, psychology, sexuality, human will, self-discipline, self-control, and other things, when you look to see how the beast system seeks to keep you in the man-animal state, the base level man state. And when I say man, I'm talking about the race of man. So it implies, every time I say it, woman as well. This is what's going on. All of this that we see happening in the world is because, largely, we don't know ourselves. The wicked people upon this earth do. And they're using their knowledge differential of how we operate in these respective areas to influence and control us. And since we've never developed any self-discipline and self-control, by and large, I'm using blanket terms here. I hope you understand what I'm saying. They get to stimulate us like they would stimulate an animal man or an animal. I mean, if you take a male dog who's just sitting there, he's normal, put a female dog in heat in front of him, give him about an hour, watch what happens. Give him less than an hour, watch what happens. They do a similar thing to us because they know that we're in that, generally, in that default state. So I guess this sums it up. That's the completion of this presentation of Know Thyself and the framework of the non-physical components of humans that most humans don't know about themselves. Take care, everyone.